Bethesda truly is finally dead. They have lost everything. The trust of their fans that they never appreciated or liked in the first place. You're more like a thing to them, honestly, than an actual person with wants, needs, and likes and whatnot. To the IPs that they own. The fact that Fallout just got literally ripped away from them and given to Obsidian is a testament to how far truly they have lost. And you know me, boys, I could not be happier about this. I have been saying for years that Bethesda deserves the worst of the worst, and they're finally getting it. Everything they sue, now they are plowing. Sown, everything they sown. English word, pick one, doesn't honestly matter at this point. In any case, the retribution is pretty swift and it's pretty nice. The last thing I wish before Christmas is to see Todd Howard lose, to see Todd Howard fired. And I believe that future is pretty close. Let's be real. Let's be real. Bethesda has nothing. They have no power. I bet Todd Howard is almost already probably out of the picture. Everything is pointing in that direction. Everything has been pointing into that direction for a year and a half now, honestly. So, expect great things. And remember my name when Todd Howard gets fired. As one of the people who has been advocating for it for such a long time.
A lot of people have talked about this Xbox reset. Naturally, it's had a ripple effect across the industry. But at the end of the day, I want to get into really who got the true reset, and that was Bethesda. If you were to ask me, Bethesda's best days as a whole, mind you, not just Bethesda Game Studios, were during the early to mid 2010s. That's where you got things like Dishonored 1 and 2.
Again, this is not a reset. Bethesda effectively got shut down. This is, again, people often comment, why are you saying shut down? It didn't shut down. These resets are the modern shutdowns of these companies. Key figures get removed, staff gets cut, completely new direction under new leadership. That is what the modern day shutdown for these companies is. Because they don't ever really get shut down. If your name as a gaming company is big enough, that name has value, which means you're never really shutting it down. You're just firing people who were leading it, making it, associating with it, and whatever, and canceling IPs, and then just restaffing it and doing something else. Bethesda will live forever. But this is already obviously not the Bethesda of old, and this is not even modern Bethesda, considering what just has happened a week and a half ago. It's a different Bethesda. This is probably the third legitimate iteration of Bethesda we have seen. And, well, it may actually change again, because I don't think this iteration is going to work out.
Prey, Wolfenstein 1 and 2, The Evil Within 1, Doom 2016, Skyrim, Fallout 4. We'd even get smaller experiments like Wolfenstein The Old Blood and Dishonored Death of the Outsider. Small, cheap, yet narrative.
Garbage, absolute garbage. Dishonored died after the first series.
Relevant games that served as a stopgap between two big entries in a series. But then, in the later 2010s, some failures did start to set in for Bethesda.
Bro, what the fuck is... You see that? What? Oh my god.
Some failures did start to set in for Bethesda. These were games like Wolfenstein 2, Prey, Evil Within 2. They all did about half of what their first entries did, and this scared Bethesda. They panicked, and while they were touting the Save Player 1 banner, they went on into live service of all things. This was the industry's golden goose in the late 2010s that everyone was chasing because they just had to have one. And Bethesda saw great opportunity with the popularity of the Fallout IP to turn that into a live service, and that gave birth to 76. Alongside that,
Matty has way too many videos where the overlaid audio is too loud. I just can't.
They tried microtransactions in something like Wolfenstein Youngblood, and they greenlit Redfall. Everyone in the industry was looking for this type.
Yeah, Wolfenstein, there is no picture, by the way, that explains how bad Wolfenstein Youngblood honestly is. Because let me explain. What you see right in front of you is a skin-tight, a bodysuit on a woman. And somehow I am not interested. neurons are not firing. Now, there are two explanations, the unlikely one and the fact that they failed. Yeah, when you fail a full body tight bodysuit, you know it's bad. You know you are incompetent or extremely woke. And I think it's both in this case.
And they greenlit Redfall. Everyone in the industry was looking for this type of golden goose, as I was talking about before, and here comes Phil Spencer with a big bag of money and a world of naivety to go with it. He buys Bethesda at their lowest in a lot of ways and inherits what would end up being a disaster for Xbox.
Yeah, the lowest one was when they launched Starfield and it died.
Xbox years later. You see, Xbox's era with Bethesda did give them a longer leash, to be fair. Teams like Tango were able to release Ghostwire Tokyo and Hi-Fi Rush. Arcane did get Deathloop out the door. Starfield and Redfall both got an extra year of development that I don't think they would have got when they were under Bethesda. However, with the
Starfield did not get an extra year of development. Starfield was ready to launch, I think, 2 years before it actually did. And Microsoft bought them and looked at the state of the game and they said, no, you are fixing bugs. Without the Microsoft acquisition, we would have potentially gotten a Fallout 76 launch repeat.
Benefit of hindsight 2020, I think we can comfortably say now that Xbox was delaying the inevitable. Having your immersive sim team do some weird amalgamation of a live service game turned co-op shooter that results in the elimination of 75% of the Prey talent that you just paid for is a game practically begging to be canceled at a studio that needs to be rebuilt. And that's not just me saying it. Bloomberg had the report that several developers hoped Microsoft would actually cancel it and just give them a clean slate after Redfall. Doing nothing with Fallout and Elder Scrolls while investing more in Starfield certainly had something to do with all of this as well, but you've heard that a million times before, so I'll just leave that there. You can even look at positive moments with Xbox and Bethesda, like shadow dropping a brand new IP, and wondering what world Tango would be in if they were able to properly market Hi-Fi Rush and build some real hype around it. The list goes on, but the point is that Bethesda's reset was inevitable and in a lot of ways needed. At least from the fan perspective, that's how it feels. We have stories coming out of once historically fantastic teams like Bethesda Game Studios that middle management and lines of communication are what led to the departure of much of the talent that defined him. Nate Perkypile was talking about how there were just so many meetings that he couldn't really work on art. Daryl Bringer, who was a former lead level designer for 76, said that
when has an artist had time to work on art?
And it was more difficult than ever to know who does what. Meanwhile, Will Shen, who was a lead quest designer at Bethesda Game Studios, said every department is scrambling for resources and saying no to collaboration requests, even when something as simple as a chair wouldn't be so simple. Did you need animations or sound effects for it? How much time did that add to the schedule? Can it not fit because one of those teams does not have the time? So I think it's going to take years to really feel the effects of this Bethesda reset. But with that in mind, it also brings about the question of what the IP Xbox is focusing on. Why are they targeting these studios? Why gut id Software if Doom is going to be a focus for the future alongside Quake? Why lay off another chunk of the Elder Scrolls Online team when there aren't any active Elder Scrolls products on the market, and this is a profitable game?
Because there are no active Elder Scrolls Online players. Maybe that's why?
Why lay off members of Bethesda Game Studios if you want Elder Scrolls 6 to release quickly? I know the simple answer in all of this is money, but when you look at
the simple answer to that is bloat. Needless to say, the whole industry is extremely bloated. Again, Diablo 4, literally 15,000 people worked on that game. 15 with 3 zeros. Wait, no, it's 3 zeros. Yes, 3 zeros. That's insane.
Jason Schreier's report on how the focus is Fallout, Elder Scrolls, Doom, Quake, and Wolfenstein for Bethesda, it paints a strange picture that somehow Wolfenstein got out of this mostly unscathed compared to the rest of the bunch.
Yeah, I have been talking about this. I have no idea how Wolfenstein... Well, we predicted the ZeniMax Elder Scrolls Online collapse. The Fallout 76 collapse that's also already kind of happening, but they're not going to shut it down until all of the stuff is out, but they're already firing people. Like, all of these firings, pretty much we have predicted on this channel. But Wolfenstein Youngblood, why? Why is that not? Now, granted, I completely forgot about it, so I did not look into it. So I made zero predictions for it. But if someone asked me, was Wolfenstein Youngblood Studio going to survive? My answer would be probably absolutely not. But it's surviving somehow. Why? Don't know. The only reasonable explanation we have here is, well, maybe they think the Wolfenstein IP has tremendous redemption possibilities? Again, there's no real good answer here.
So why is that? And that's what we're going to do here and try to unpack it. If you're new here, you're into what's going on with Bethesda, you're in the right place.
Like and subscribe right now. Do it. It takes less than a second, and I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for everyone who does it. It seriously helps out the channel. Like the video right now. Thank you.
I'd like to begin by glossing over this letter from Jill Braff, who is the boss at Bethesda. This was released by IGN, and it's here that we see a letter that is indicating that Bethesda needs to align their talent, tech, and focus on IP with the greatest potential, of which we already know what those IP are. I'd like to start off with id Software because they were a big part of the conversation within this industry. There's no denying that this team got hit extremely hard. Over 130 layoffs for id Software, and it definitely feels a bit unfair when you look at what they've done for Xbox. They shipped consistently, which was a rarity for the brand for a while, and this is also a team that had a 4 to 5, 6 year development timeline, which is also a rarity for the industry, and yet half their staff was terminated. According to estimates by Alinea Analytics, Doom: The Dark Age's first week on the market found 3 million players. Not too bad, right? But thanks to Game Pass, only
players,
800,000 of those were estimated to be purchases. This also happened to coincide with id spending an extra year on the game compared to the timeline between Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal. Following all of this was mass speculation. What's going on with id Software? Are they just a support studio that's going to follow up Bethesda Game Studios and work on Elder Scrolls 6 or something? But then we received 3 key pieces of information. One is we learned about the games that id was pitching, which was a John Wick-inspired Wild West game, a Perfect Dark game to our surprise, even though one was just canceled last year, and a co-op focused Doom game. Number 2, according to id themselves, they are now the same size as when they made Doom 2016, and id Tech would still be used despite the industry concern following claims that their entire coding staff was laid off, and also it was confirmed in a follow-up report by Jez Corden that Machine Games is still heavily using id Tech. Now, I will admit this statement made by id Software does read a bit like there's a gun to their head, but we will circle back to this sentiment of their team being Doom 2016 sized a little bit later. The third and final piece of key information came from Tom Warren, where he said he has heard that id Software is in the early stages of a new Doom project, and I imagine that is likely the pitched co-op focused Doom video game. This will all be relevant in a moment. Let's circle around to ZeniMax Online Studios. Last year, the team faced massive layoffs alongside the exit of their boss, Matt Firer, and this was following the cancellation of Project
The hell was that?
Blackbird, a game that no doubt with what's happening with Destiny right now, I think Xbox wishes they had in their back pocket for this year. And so when we started to hear about the Xbox reset and what that meant for all of Bethesda's teams, I thought ZeniMax Online Studios already had the course correction in mind, but it turns out there was more for them.
There is no course correction. There's only the current situation.
Kotaku had reported that half of the remaining Elder Scrolls Online team had been laid off, with multiple staff internally claiming that they have
based. That's what you get for making the literal gods of the universe canonically trans.
No idea how the game will continue onwards from here. Following this, there were concerns that Elder Scrolls Online, myself included, we were thinking, hey, ESO is going to enter some type of maintenance mode. How does this make sense if you are also trying to make money off of the Elder Scrolls IP? And not only that, but there's literally
you're trying to make money off of the Elder Scrolls IP by making the next Elder Scrolls game. That would actually be it, not this garbage.
Really no other consistent cadence of Elder Scrolls content on the market except for this game until ES6 comes out, which we'll talk about the status of that game in a moment. Then came a report by Massively Overpowered that said Baratron, who's an admin for the UESP Discord and a well-known ESO player, attended an ESO tavern event in Germany where he spoke to some of the ZeniMax staff. He said, quote, according to both Jason Barnes, the Associate Design Director, and Jessica Folsom, the Associate Director of Community Management, ZeniMax Online Studios is now at the same size as which it was when they made both Rothgar.
Yeah, and notice one thing, that all of the layoffs in Xbox are either full liquidations or They are actually cutting back to like a time period of 10 years ago when all of the better stuff was made. Which obviously is not going to help because the problem of, for example, everything Bethesda is wokeness. Well, as Bethesda itself is not really that woke, they're just super incompetent. But ZeniMax, oh woke. Wolfenstein, it oh woke. Every single thing of these is just, political pandering, not actual game development.
And Somerset, which, as we know, are both highly acclaimed DLCs. So while the layoffs are extremely upsetting for everyone involved, of course including players, this is not necessarily the end of new content or the game going into maintenance mode. Following this, we did receive a comment from one of the community managers from ESO on their forum saying that they just wanted to follow up on this as well. We are planning a revised roadmap. However, as noted above, Nick and Susan are working on timing and taking care of our team in what has been an understandably difficult week. The plan is still to deliver great content, and we will hopefully have an update soon. Now, this is just my opinion, but it is worth considering that DLC like Somerset Isles is one of my favorite for ESO. I found that one incredibly memorable, especially from an artistic front. But if you think about the time period that was released in, same thing with what's going on with id Software, you're starting to notice a little bit of a trend here. Let's continue on to Bethesda Game Studios. The Fallout 76 team saw a pretty massive layoff. Specifically, the quest design team saw a pretty big cut.
Based! These clowns needed to be fired long ago.
That's from lead to associate level positions. There was also a report from IGN that indicates people internally feel like they cannot continue supporting Fallout 76 unless they have the help of an external studio, given how much talent was cut from that squad. Now, given 76 has enjoyed a lot of success, I think it's fair to say that this is a team that gradually beefed up over time. In this very same report, as I've covered before, we also learned that Elder Scrolls 6 is expected to be delayed again. This cites low morale, crunch, and losing generational talent as potential setbacks for the project.
The generational talent still gets me laughing.
And if we return to the
generational talent at Bethesda. Wow, what a combo of word salad.
The quotes from earlier by ex-Bethesda Game Studios talent, of which there are many, many more I could pull from, saying that the chain of command had ruined the studio's ability to be nimble, then I fail to see this as the worst thing in the world. And it also reads very weird with even extremely recent headlines, such as this one from Games Radar, where Bethesda says that it's going to be more difficult than ever to get Fallout and Elder Scrolls games out when they're literally bigger than ever, and we've barely seen anything from either of those franchises. So what do you mean? Well, let's get into it. I want to answer the question from earlier. Why lay off your staff surrounding an IP that you also want to focus on if you're
Why lay off the staff that has failed time and time and time again, proven incompetence? Why lay off the people who don't know how to do their job? It's a mystery, Maddie. Jeez, I can't figure out a single reason why would we fire the guy who claims to know how to fix a car, but when he needs to fix the car, he just breaks it more. I can't figure out why we would hire people who fit that description. Interesting.
Xbox and extract maximum value on. That's probably the team you want to keep, right? Well, there's a couple of pillars that I think we now see Xbox is focusing on, and the industry at large is starting to do the same thing. When it comes to Bethesda, a little bit of this is getting back to the basic building blocks of what makes.
By the way, you know what I love about these conversations? It's whenever people who don't know these things and understand or haven't looked into how these things function, when they hear that a company has fired developers, and then they're a month later rehiring developers. Yeah, that's because the people who got fired are incompetent. That's the reason. That's the reason you see this. If a company fires someone and they're rehiring, the reason that person got fired is very, very on the nose simple.
Made Bethesda a worthwhile purchase in the first place, and that is focusing on internal collaboration. Jill's message said as much, but also we have stories about id Software helping Bethesda Game Studios improve the shooting for Fallout 4, or Tango Gameworks making the Hellraiser for Doom 2016. While my understanding is when it comes to Bethesda, this type of stuff never went away, I definitely think it's going to be emphasized. I think that will be combined in with a more strategic focus on outsourcing talent. Keyword being strategic. Asha Sharma did say they're looking to cut their vendor spend by 50%. Now, my assumption is that they'd like their core team to do a bulk of the work to basically create sockets for outsourced teams to fill. As Xbox currently stands, they and almost everyone in the industry ventures out into co-development efforts. A great example for Xbox is Eidos Montreal basically doing Grounded 2 for Obsidian, or The Initiative working alongside Crystal Dynamics on Perfect Dark. So while I am venturing a guess, I feel like this will still be a play for them, but with much more precise timing.
I love how all of this is fake.
Let me give you probably the best example.
And if you don't know, yes, this is fake.
Industry can offer right now that's existed in the last year. And I know it's an industry darling, but I do think it's a game that a lot of teams are studying and trying to extract.
You know, it's my favorite way to know something's fake, when you have a situation like this.
Now that's existed in the last.
Okay, see? So you're in the corner watching from like above or whatever, and there's like 3 enemies, and they do the, let's mark them. So you always know, it's a fucking small room with 3 enemies. What do you mean, mark them? Like, what the hell am I marking them for? What is the point? So I know that they're there? Of course I know it. They're right in front of me. What do you mean, mark the enemies? This is a classic, not actually a game, but fake trope.
Year. And I know it's an industry darling, but I do think it's a game that a lot of teams are studying and trying to extract what they can emulate to create a similar level of success, which a lot of times is dependent on just how much money you are spending on a project. Indeed, I'm talking about Expedition 33. Let's get into it. This is a game that, as confirmed in an interview with the New York Times, cost less than $10 million to make. And as of its 1-year anniversary...
Wait, wasn't it previously less than 20 or 30? And also, I don't know if this is true. I'm assuming it's not, probably. But now I'm seeing claims that Expedition 33 wasn't made by 33 people, which is questionable.
Expedition 33 sold $8 million. You don't even have to do the math between platform, engine, and publisher/developer splits to know this game made an absolute killing at $50 a pop, given the amount of money they spent on it. And usually when you see this type of high-level success, you think to yourself, okay, what's going to change now that you've got the money you, quote, really wanted all along, end quote? How are we bulking up the studio? Well, interestingly, none at all for Sandfall Interactive. When speaking on an episode of the Video Game Club, Guillaume Broche, the creative director of Expedition 33, said that while there is pressure to go bigger and do more with their next game by players, Guillaume says that this would actually result in a game that the development team wouldn't want to play. He also said here that he's accepting of the idea that people may not...
This makes sense because these are Ubisoft Montreal people, by the way, if you did not know. And they were kind of upset with the fact that there's just too much corporate ladders to go through to get even anything done and whatnot. So they technically left. Again, actually, I have never said this. The way that you can find people who are good in these giant companies in the corporate ladders is, by the way, about their annoyance towards how many layers of management they need to go through if they want something special done. If someone's fully okay with the layers of management being obviously too high, that means that they're just kind of being there for a paycheck, they're not actually giving a fuck. If someone is annoyed by the amount of management that they have to deal with to get something, then that means that they're probably actually a good employee. Very easy tell. Very easy tell in big companies.
Not actually like their next game as much as Expedition, and that's fine because that's life, and they didn't make the first game to please anyone. And while it's absolutely awesome to hear the attitude that they got going into it, I also think you'll notice that in response to making a ton of money, there is no staffing up. There is no doubling the team size. It is the same core team of roughly 30, which is a rarity, but also the best choice. With the money they've made from Expedition 33, they can maintain their team size with ease and even give themselves room to fail. Specifically, back to my example with Xbox of creating...
It's kind of honestly crazy about this because because this is not a new strategy. One of the most prominent users of this strategy is probably the studio behind Hollow Knight. Don't remember their name, but Hollow Knight is an example of this. They struck success, and then they didn't really expand. Now, obviously, they did expand some of the stuff that they needed, But all in all, they didn't expand massively. Like, a lot of these studios just make these stupid decisions that they need to expand massively. You make you make a game that sells 5 million copies. Congratulations! Now instead of a 20-man team, you're the 200-man team, and no one knows how to do anything because it's your first attempt at something. And they effectively run out of money instantaneously, and then they need to do a publishing deal with like Xbox or PlayStation or something like that, and everything goes to shit. Way too many companies do this. Larion's not currently doing this, by the way. And all of the examples, pretty much, of big successes or successes that have been long standing for a couple of years now are this. And then there's examples that have royally fucked this up. And some of the best examples for these royal F ups are Ubisoft. Assassin's Creed sold like hotcakes, and then they expanded like crazy, and now it's in debt to literally 1 point something billion. BioWare. BioWare is a great example of this. And what's the last one? BioWare did Mass Effect. Mass Effect was their thing. They made Mass Effect. It worked. They kept doing Mass Effect like they were for 2 more times, and then they started expanding massively, and now they're paying the price. I think I'm missing one more a great example in this, but whatever. You kind of get the point. All of these companies expanded just because probably everyone said, "Oh, you got a lot of money now, you should spend it." No, don't expand. No, don't hire 100 people and a fucking guy who sits in the vestibule and make matcha lattes. Don't do that.
Getting sockets to then be filled. Guess what Expedition 33 did? They created the socket, and then they outsourced their animations for combat to a South Korean team. Specifically, Guillaume Broche talked about how he found them on YouTube. What Expedition 33 is proof of is, yes, a miracle in a lot of ways, but it's proof that a lot of low-to-the-ground work can still be done in this industry to cut costs pretty much every conceivable way, and there's a ton of talent to go around that can just kind of hop in during certain points of the project, get things ready to go, and then peace out for their next project. I'm not defending what Xbox is doing by any...
Well, in any case, I guess that's it for the Bethesda part. Yeah, the industry is gonna experience a shell shock. What can be said about this? Anyway, that was Mr. Matty 10 out of 10. Have a nice day. Bye.